Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Saturday, January 18th, 2025, and today's topic is, I'm going to call it cross-hatching fine details, because that's what I'll be doing. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, and I use timers to stay focused and to build a sketching habit. I'm going to start 10 minutes just to review where I'm at. So this is a continuation from yesterday's video, which I'll put a link to. And yeah, if you want more detail about it, basically I went over, it's kind of a continuation of this, but yeah, there's more detail in the other video. But in that one, yesterday, I went over the thumbnail process and also how to get the sketch. I started to do some shading. And we had already established the value pattern here, and so I had started to do that in the, basically it's an illustration now. I feel like once I get to this point, you can't really call it a sketch. It's sketchy, but to me it's a drawing and an illustration, but like done in a sketchy style and also like or crosshatch. So that's what I'll talk about today. So yeah, with that said, in the fine details, sometimes I'll just call it like final details, but fine details. And speaking of that, I'll zoom in. Yeah, you can see the fine detail. The tools I use was like a felt tip pen and like a fine point Sharpie pen. So the felt tip is Papermate, and then this is Sharpie, and then like I went in, I'll do a little bit today with it's like a Sharpie acrylic paint marker, and I can see a little bit of, so this is kind of what the fine detail is about. It's like the highlights. Now, in some ways, in yesterday's video, I talked about how I wanted to leave some areas, kind of like this, where I wanted the white of the paper, but sometimes you ink over it. But yeah, sometimes you're going to, even when you do your best to kind of not cover up like the white of the paper with pen and ink, like cross-hatching technique, so you can kind of check that out, like you still will cover it, and sometimes that's a good thing. I mean, that's kind of the process, so it just depends. But I mean, you can use something like a paint marker or acrylic paint or something like that. What else? So yeah, I just went ahead and rendered it, like just cross-hatched it. I could have had it be more open like this, but it just depends on if I were going to color it. If it looks like this, I'm not going to try to color this because it wouldn't look as good. It would be kind of muddy. However, it would still be a good, like if I were going to paint it, I would still use the values here. So like the dark, I would just pick like the colors. And in the previous videos from this week, you can kind of see sort of my approach, like with the color and stuff, with that night illustration. As far as like the fine details, so I didn't really, you kind of saw like how to do the initial stages of like the cross-hatching technique in yesterday's video. And if you didn't want to go too crazy with cross-hatching, it's basically kind of like this. That's sort of the second or third like pass kind of thing. When you get to something like this, it's mostly about so from like yesterday's video to this video, so there was like about a couple of hours to do this, and it's just about, like I mentioned, just being methodical and just patient with it, and that's really it. And I've messed up a lot on like overworking it and stuff, not on this, but like in the past. So stage. One, it was helpful to, after working on it for a while, to step away and get some sleep and stuff and like not look at it, because the values will be, you just kind of, your eyes become sort of numb to it. And so part of this has to do with still keeping, like there's a lot of squinting going on, so I still want to keep with like the idea of this value pattern, but then obviously look at the, like this illustration. So during like the fine detail, I'm just kind of wanting to, again, just kind of squint at it and then emphasize the fine detail basically. So for example, if this is supposed to be rock, I want to really emphasize the texture of the rock. And it's interesting because the more finished, like the closer you get to finishing the drawing, the more patient you have to be. And so I'm just going to do what I can see sort of obvious to me and then leave it, and then yeah, it may be done. And that's kind of what I mean. Like you won't be able to see it a lot of times. So it kind of goes with that idea of, let me go ahead and zoom out because I'm working on, so that's the other thing, I'm kind of working on different different areas. That's the other thing too with the fine detail, is if you focus too much on one area, you actually create more work for yourself, because then that part becomes overly like detailed. It changes like the look of it, and so then you have to make the other areas look like that. So that's really what like fine detail is. It's just stuff like this, just unifying the whole picture without throwing off your values. So for example, I still want the cave, like the rock area, and that's the other thing too, the textures are important. Like it has to sort of read as a cave, as rocks, and not look like wood or trees. You're wanting to separate like the different textures, and it takes practice obviously with whatever technique you're using. It's going to take practice and experimentation and messing up, and but yeah, doing this with pen and ink I've messed up plenty, but that's why it's good to have a sketchbook to experiment with. But yeah, this is just very like subtle, final detail stuff. Just wanted to share where I'm at, because a lot of it really is just leaving it alone once you get pretty far. I did have to adjust. So part of it was kind of adjusting the figure, which is what the gray marker was for, or the paint marker. But also it's like a good technique also. Like it's not a bad, sometimes that's like the best thing to do, is go in with like some paint. It could be white paint, just to do fine detail basically. And again, part of it is, this is like a style, like it's a look, and so it helps to kind of see. Now in the past, before there are videos of people showing how to do this, I would just have to look at pictures in books and figure out, basically go from like a sketch and try to figure out how they did it. So I'm just wanting to share how I do it. Like, this is one way of doing it. But yeah, it takes, so I was going to say it takes work. So basically, this was helpful. The thumbnail was helpful. And then in yesterday's video, I showed how to lay out, like go from the thumbnail to like this, which is about, I guess, 3 times as big. But I just made it fit. I needed it to be this size on the page. And so that's using proportion. And so that's why I'm putting this in basic drawing, the playlist. And so this is helpful for, especially for illustration, but also for comic books. The previous sketch, the other one, is a little bit more suited for comics. This is more of a black and white illustration. I was going to say, but yeah, so then the cross-hatching, the initial pass of just setting up like the light and dark, and then the next thing was pushing the values. And then at that point, I just went ahead and decided, well, I'm gonna just render this whole thing like with cross-hatching. Like that's the basic technique. If it wasn't cross-hatching, it could be a little bit more like fill in like the dark areas, just like with ink, and that would be more comic book. Now to do that, I would probably have to spend more time with like the layout of it. So I would have to map out the dark areas, and that's just a stylistic thing. And it wouldn't be like a bad move. As far as like fine details, I'm just going to refine some of these shapes, but not overwork it. If I don't see it, I'm just going to leave it alone. So part of it is using the smaller pen, for example, like in the back here. It does make a difference. Like I'm not gonna mess with that. But yeah, that's really it. One thing is, it's good to not only like step away from it. I mean, it's good to kind of focus for a while and just kind of build up all the values, and then, but then like step away and then like come back to it like I am right now, and then also take a photo. So like if I stop working on it, I'll take a photo. It's good for a few reasons. One, it kind of gives you a record. Like let's say I'm done for today, I'll take a photo, and then that way you can flip it. You can kind of flip it around, and then kind of like looking in the mirror. You just want to accentuate the texture, which is why it's called fine detail. You want to have it be detailed, but like read, and so that when you see it, you immediately, your mind starts to fill in like all the details of like, okay, that's a cave and that's rocks and stuff. So yeah, the theme behind this picture, the idea behind it was approaching, or is approaching, the inmost cave, and that's part of the hero's journey, and that was something that I kept in mind as I worked on this, was I wanted it to convey the theme. But before I sign off, I'm going to go ahead and sign this, since that's what I did in the previous one. And this would be 2025. And yeah, I might use this if I work on it some more, which I probably will touch it up, but that's pretty much all it is at this point. It's kind of just touching it up. I'll probably use it for the 3,000 subscriber thank you sketch, which I am thankful for, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But yeah, you can do this cross-hatching thing. You can kind of fade like the gray area. But yeah, I also wanted it to go with the other sketch. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today. I want to thank you for joining me for the daily sketching routine. Hopefully you come back if you like these videos. Please support the channel. I do appreciate it. And until next time, keep on sketching.